Hello, everyone, and welcome to this evening evening where I am anyway. It's nice to see you all, and welcome, KD.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and excited to be with the group, and thanks for the invitation.
Okay. So what I would like to do is let's just take a minute to sit and gather our energies before we get started. So if you could just sit quietly, just for a moment, allowing yourself to empty and just feel the shared space between us. Okay, we only have a short time together, so I do want to jump in and maybe offer a little bit of an introduction. This hour is dedicated to, I think I put it, attaining excellence. Excellence and mastery is kind of what we want to speak about today. And these are topics which are very dear to my heart, but which I tend not to speak about too much. And that's partly because in the modern climate, words like excellence and mastery tend to have cultural baggage associated with them that is problematic. And I get that. There are problematic ways of thinking about excellence and mastery. I'm also aware that if we ignore them completely, we will throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, and miss some things that are very, very important. And so those very important things are the things that KD and I want to speak with you about today and share about today. And I'm excited because KD's presented me with an opportunity to do this. So part of the context for this is KD is offering a yoga master retreat in February in Costa Rica. And he and I have been speaking about his retreat and what he plans to do on the retreat and how he's structuring the retreat. And I think we've been speaking about it for 6 months, probably.
In a couple of months, at least. Yes, more than.
Yeah. And yeah, it's got me thinking, and it's got me intrigued, just thinking about the opportunity of a 7-day retreat. I'm about to do one. I'm about to start one next Monday, actually. What I've always tried to do on retreats, what I know KD is trying to do on his retreat, and also the very particular form of mastery that KD brings to his work. I have the great opportunity to meet some incredible people. I have always had the opportunity. I continue to have it. KD is one of those people. In talking with him, I find an unending wealth of experience. Every time I think he didn't do something else, I find out I'm wrong. There's something else in there. And he's learned things all along the way, all in the domain of spirituality, mastery, the very particular consciousness that it takes to go into something with the subtlety and precision required to truly master it. And I think KD has done that in a few domains of life. I only wish we had more time so we could talk about more of the things that he has explored, but we're going to be a little bit focused today on this idea of mastery. And we're going to speak about it in two ways. One, as a shift in perception, essentially a paradigm shift that is a crucial part of what it means to master something or to gain excellence in something. And secondly, so the first one was a perception shift. What was the second one? The second, sorry. The second one is a particular orientation toward intention that changes. Both of these have been absolutely crucial to my own development. And I honestly believe there's so much richness in this conversation that I want to go into today. And I couldn't have a better co-host than KD for this particular conversation. So I'm gonna be quiet for a minute, and I'm gonna let KD introduce anything he'd like to say about this, the topics we're about to embark on, or his own background, his plans for what he wants to teach. However you would like to introduce yourself in the evening, KD.
Sure. Well, Jeff, really, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And as Jeff was saying, this topic of mastery is very near and dear to my heart as well. And just what's beautiful about the moment right now is just that even the way that Jeff introduced the topic with a certain presence, a certain cadence in the way he speaks, a certain way that the whole group was brought together. These are the essence, these are the essentials of approaching mastery. Because on the practical level, what mastery is really about is being able to be open to more and more levels of discernment, a greater expansiveness of our capacity for discernment, and the ability to be a wayfarer in that. We have this amazing, remarkable, beautiful, loving, and terrifying world that we live in, this phenomenal world. And then we have this infinite layers of other aspects of consciousness and awareness that are available that we're so lucky to explore in this kind of setting. And by sharpening and exploring these capacities of discernment, it really just brings so much greater richness into our lives. And that's really, while we're here, what we, that's the gift that we have while we're here. And so whether it's sitting in meditation or sitting in awareness and presence, or being in the yoga studio and following the way of yoga. I see yoga really more as a way than as a practice. It's a way to really bring ourselves fully into mastery, not just of meditation or yoga, but of life. And as Jeff was so kind to mention, I'm doing this retreat in Costa Rica where we're going to be in nature and we're going to do yoga, but really nature is going to be the yoga studio. And we'll explore the senses, and it will be an exploration of the alchemy that happens in nature and the alchemy that can happen through yoga. And just to say another sentence or two is just, which for me, yoga, the best definition I've ever heard of yoga, and I'm doing a little bit of a riffing on, is that I feel it really connects to the essence of yoga, is that yoga is the ending of the definitions of the field of consciousness. Yoga is the ending of the definitions of the field of consciousness. And how does one teach that? How does one learn that? How does one experience that? And I think that, these points that Jeff has brought up to be the center of our talk tonight are really crucial and essential to beginning to embark on that journey. And so excited to be here.
That's great. Beautiful. Thank you, KD. And what I wanted to do to make the first point that I want to share with you is share with you 3 different little vignettes, little stories. And these all illustrate that aspect of mastery, which has to do with mastery as a new perception. The master, or the what distinguishes someone who's competent or good at something from someone who's excellent at it. Part of that has to do with a shift, a difference in the way they perceive. So the first story was I saw once in a video, I think, but there was a woman, I think she was about 90 years old. She lived in New Orleans, and she was known as the greatest gumbo chef in New Orleans. And gumbo is a big deal in New Orleans. So to be the greatest gumbo chef is a big deal. And they interviewed a lot of the younger chefs that worked with her. And what they kept saying was, there is no way for you to learn to do what she does, because you don't know what she's going to do on any given day. So when she makes today's gumbo, she's not making it according to a recipe. She's making it according to what the gumbo wants to be today. And I remember this very explicitly. This young man said, someday she'll be making the gumbo and suddenly she'll say, I need you to run out and get some popcorn because the gumbo wants popcorn today. And, he would think, who puts popcorn in their gumbo? But then when it's finished and you eat it, it feels perfect. And, the only way for them to really learn to develop mastery is by working with her, not studying what she does because she'll do something different tomorrow, but absorbing her way of seeing and beginning to become more sensitive themselves. Similarly, I saw a story about a Japanese woodworker who was considered to be a true master. It was an interview I saw with his wife. And she was describing how when he is going to start a project, he goes out into the woods and he looks for the first piece of wood that he needs for his table or whatever he's building. And she said, usually it takes him about 3 days to find that first piece. And he keeps finding wood and holding it in his hands and feeling it for about an hour and then deciding that's not the one, and then going on. And she was complaining, saying, I'm always telling him, if you worked faster, we'd make more money. And he says, if I worked faster, I wouldn't be doing what I do. I can only work as fast as the wood speaks to me. And once he finds the right piece of wood, he crafts it by hand, being as sensitive as he can to what the wood wants him to do. And I just thought he was another beautiful example of a very different level of perception brought to an activity. The last one is a personal story. I had this incredible opportunity 10 years ago or so, maybe 15 now, to spend a weekend on a retreat that was being held in Ken Wilber's house in Denver. And Ken Wilber is the integral philosopher And we were doing a retreat there. There were about 10 of us. The majority of them were all close to Ken and had asked him if it would be possible to use his loft for the retreat. And Ken wasn't involved. It was just going to be us. And he had said yes. So anyway, aside, I actually slept in Ken Wilber's library for 3 nights and spent most of every night thumbing through his books, reading his handwritten notes. But as it turned out, after about half a day, Ken started coming to every session because it was happening in his apartment. I think he couldn't avoid it. And all of the people that were there, all of the ones that were close to Ken, which was probably 6 or 7, they were all among the smartest people I had ever met. And they knew Ken's work in a way that was a little scary. They could quote verbatim footnotes from just about any book and then argue them. And I thought, wow, this is pretty amazing. They've essentially memorized 20 volumes of work and really understood them to an extraordinary degree. And I was super impressed and still am. But then at some point, Ken was talking to us and they were asking him questions and kind of debating things with him. And I saw the difference. And I hadn't necessarily been a huge Ken Wilber fan prior to this weekend. I appreciated his work and I appreciated everything that he did. But when I saw him, there was a particular moment where I realized that integral theory is not a theory for him, that he's just talking about the way he sees, which means that sometimes he gives an answer different than is in the book. So all of the guys who were studying the books, they would give this answer and they would be completely sure because they knew it was in the book. And Ken would say, no, not in this case. Actually, it's different. And how do you know? Because I'm looking and I can see how it is. And I remember realizing that at least in the domain of integral theory, Ken was truly a master. And I listened to him differently after that because I realized that what I could get from him personally was more than what I could ever get from reading any number of his books. It was a different thing. So those 3 stories I want to use to illustrate that aspect of mastery or excellence, which is a different way of seeing. And I experienced that myself, hopefully with some degree of modesty. But the one thing I have truly deep mastery of is meditation because of the just profound number of hours I've spent. And I know that, I've been teaching meditation for 20 years. And I know it's the funniest thing because often people will ask me questions that are sort of designed to trick me into giving the answer they want me to give. But I've realized long ago, I can't really be tricked in that domain because I don't need to remember the right answer. Someone asks me a question and I just look and tell them what I see. It's like the easiest thing in the world. You just look, it's like someone says, what color is the sky? And you look and you tell them, except it's in the domain of meditation. And it's become so deeply embedded as a part of me and a part of my psyche that it really doesn't have anything to do with what I know. And people think, and they'll say, I know a lot about it, but it doesn't feel to me like I know anything about it. It just feels obvious to me. I just look, I hear the question and I answer. So I wanted to give us the chance to contemplate the depth of shift in perception that is possible. See, whatever your pursuit is, whether it's yoga or meditation, whatever spiritual pursuit, it's possible for that to become so I don't even know what happens. It's like it becomes so part of your being that it becomes your perception. You're not seeing meditation anymore. You're seeing from it. And there's no more, I don't know. I get stumbled. I don't know what to say anymore. You just come to a place where it is you. There's no separation between you and that anymore. It's not an object that you can see outside. It's just what you are and where you're seeing from. So KD, I'm going to leave you right there to pick up this conversation.
Well, it's really beautiful how you're describing that, and to me, I would interpret it as it's a surrendering, to something bigger that is the teacher, or is the source, or that is the guide, and it's a mystery. It's something that's really mysterious. And if I also look at my own journey, in particular through yoga, I remember back in the beginning when we're talking here about some spontaneous intuition. Like, I found my first yoga class at a time when I had just gotten out of college, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was kind of depressed. I didn't know, where am I going to go from here? And I was walking down 14th Street at the corner of 6th Avenue in Manhattan. And I looked up, and there was this flashing neon sign that said yoga. And I was like, that's funny, on the second floor of this old building in Chelsea. And I went upstairs there, and my first yoga teacher, Dharma Mitra, came and opened the door, and boom, I spent the next 5 years there, pretty much 6 or 7 days a week studying. It was like this flash of spontaneous intuition that I don't know where it came from. It certainly wasn't something that I was intending at that moment. But it was the beginning of a lifelong way through yoga. And then as I look at the momentum and how this is sort of built over the decades, where in the vocabulary words that we're using, tonight, that there became this effortless action where as yoga has just become more and more something that is part of me, it now guides me, and my orientation toward yoga is this effortless way. That when we come into the room for a class, yoga is teaching yoga. And just like we did at the beginning of this talk, where, we just didn't go right into the talk or the dialogue, it was like, there was the moment when something moved what is happening here, and it came into fruition. And this is the way that I bow to the teaching, I bow to the Ristri, and yoga is teaching yoga. And I am the servant of that. I am the beneficiary of that. And there's this effortless to it there, that with that effortlessness, there is a freedom, and in this surrendering to something bigger, to this bigger mystery, to this bigger teaching. So,
it's beautiful. Thank you, KD. And I think following on from that, we are very much part of a culture in which, and this is pretty ubiquitous, certainly in Western culture, but even beyond that now, where we are really conditioned and trained in the value of working hard, effortful work. That's what we're taught is the way to succeed. You work hard, effortfully, and you make things happen. And there certainly is a lot of benefit. There's a lot of things you can achieve that way. But mastery is not one of them. Mastery can't be achieved just through effortful work. I was a classic effortful worker as a student. I always wanted to work harder than anybody else. I always wanted to meditate longer, stay up later, uh, you know, give more intensity, more focus. Every meditation retreat I have described in the past, I felt like a horse before the race starts, when they're in that little block and the door hasn't opened yet and they're kind of bashing their hooves on the ground and snorting because they're so excited to get going. And that's how I would start my meditation retreats. And I thought that was going to be a helpful way to be in meditation. And I just remember the day when I was expressing to my own teacher my frustration that I wasn't experiencing the kind of benefit of the practice that I felt like I should be, given how hard I was working. And he just said, you can't get there by bashing your head against the wall. You can keep banging your head against the same wall until forever. That's never going to be the way to succeed in this. And I got what he was saying. He was saying, I'm trying so hard, and that's just not how it works. And I remember the first time I tasted something different. And it was in the domain of sleep and meditation, because I was a notorious sleeper. And I found it, so many meditations, I would just sit down intensely, unwilling to fall asleep, biting my own tongue to stay awake. And then, of course, after about half an hour, bank, I'd be out. And I, for years, I just struggled with sleep. But then I got this message of, don't bang your head against the wall. I thought, yeah, I've been banging my head against this sleep wall because I've been trying so hard. And something came over me. It was this I could say I did it, but it didn't feel that way. I remember I just said, you know what? I think I'm going to meditate all night tonight, and I'm just not going to be sleepy. I'm not going to struggle with sleep. I'm not going to try to stay awake. I'm just going to sit and be awake, and I'm going to allow that to be easy. And it kind of sounded even bizarre to me when I was saying it, but it just felt very like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And then I sat down and I started at about 11 p.m. and I ended up sitting until about 5 a.m. I took a couple of breaks during that time to get up. And the whole time I was rock solid awake. Even though I could feel myself exhausted, I wasn't even tempted to get sleepy, because somehow I had intended to be awake. And usually I was intending to try hard to be awake. And if you intend to try hard to do something, you'll get the opportunity to try hard, but you probably won't succeed. But I just intended to do it. And it's a different intention. And later, over time, in different things that I read, I recognized that what I had learned to tap into there was true power. True power has to do with the depth of your intention. True power doesn't have to do with intensity, doesn't have to do with energy, it doesn't have to do with effort. It has to do with a very simple, very quiet, irrefutable knowing of what's going to happen. It's not even an intention like I'm going to do something. It's just a knowing of what's going to happen, as if it's already happened. And there's no chance it's not going to happen, not because you're going to work so hard that you're going to make sure it doesn't, but because it's kind of already happened. I'll tell one quick story about this. It was literally one of the most profound experiences of my life. I was doing a retreat with 4 people. It was a very small retreat. And when the retreat started, it was a 3-day retreat. I don't know what, but I got very excited about a question. And I had us sit around in a circle, and I said, okay, I want everyone to start talking about why they're here, what their intention was. And as I heard each person talking about their intention, I just realized none of these intentions were going to actually yield anything of value. They were all in the domain of I'm going to try hard to, or I'm going to work hard for, or I'm hope that, or I want that. And we were in Copenhagen. We had all flown from the United States. And I had one of those rare moments you have where you're truly inspired by something. And I said, okay, look, none of these intentions are really going to make any difference here today. And this was also about 10 or 15 years ago. I said, so as far as I'm concerned, there is only one intention. There's only one reason any of you should be on this retreat. And that's because this weekend of this retreat is the most important weekend of your life. So if it's not, then you should leave now. And everybody was kind of stunned. And I said, I'll give you an hour to think about that. And if you can come to a place where, not where you intend for this to be the most important weekend in your life, but the place where you already know that it is, and we're just going to see how. We know it's the most important weekend, and we just don't know exactly what that means yet, but we're going to find out together. And over the course of the hour, each person came to a place where they were willing, where that was where they were standing. This is the most important weekend in my life. We had 3 days that were so happening in an alternate universe. I don't even know how to describe it to you. That weekend is still the most important weekend of my life, and it will always be the most important weekend of my life, because that was the weekend when I learned what true intention is, and I also experienced the possibility of sharing that in a group with other people. And I don't talk to most of those people at this point. I mean, we've gone different ways. It's been a lot of years, but there is one that I am still in touch with. And every single time we have a conversation, we talk about how that was the most important weekend of our life. And we are not making it up. And every single time, it just blows my mind that we manifested that through the power of intention. And I think this is the other aspect of mastery. So the perception, the shift in perception that creates a kind of sensitivity that allows you to hear what's wanted in the moment, coupled with this quiet but absolutely unshakable intention that is simply a knowing of how things are. And you put those two things together, and you're not in the same universe anymore, and everything is different. And honestly, if I just died right now, and that was the last thing I was able to share with anyone, I would be happy, because there is nothing more important than those two things in terms of what can absolutely and utterly change what kind of human being we are. So this is just something I am utterly thrilled about. And I have nothing else to say about it, actually. So I'm going to hand this over.
Well, that was quite an inspiring story. And your speaking about it took me back to a story of my own that reflects intention. And actually, I think would be of interest to you because of your history. But I first went to India in 1996 because I wanted to meet Papaji, right? I had read Andrew Cohen's book back there, and I was all on fire about non-duality. And when I went to India on that trip, maybe there's two stories going to come in here. We'll see where it ends up. But when I landed in India, I ended up meeting another American woman on the plane, and she said, "Do you want to come to my guru's ashram tonight? Because there's a special event." And I got all excited. I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to hop off the plane and immediately do something spiritual. And, it was 2 a.m. because when you get off the plane in India, usually from the US, it's usually in the middle of the night. So I went to the guru's ashram and they were all there. The holiday was Krishna Janmashtami, which is Krishna's birthday. And what everybody was doing is they were going up to this little baby Krishna who was in a cradle, little Krishna doll, and they'd go up and they'd just rock this little baby Krishna in the cradle. And that was it. So I watched and I saw how all these little children would go up there, and it was a way where the little children could express love to this little baby doll that was up there, but it was almost like a way of practicing love. And I went up and I rocked the baby Krishna, and I thought, okay, I did my first thing in India and I'm tired. It's 3 a.m. I'm going to go home and go to bed. So I did that. And then I went on to meet Papaji, who I tried to see for a couple of days. It was the monsoon season, so I had gotten conjunctivitis and they wouldn't let me come to the satsangs and things like that. And then the last day that he was going to be doing a satsang, because he was going away or something like that, they finally let me go in there. And I had written this letter of my intentions to Papaji about how badly I wanted to awaken and how badly I wanted to be free and all this kind of stuff. And I had them give him the letter, before the satsang and stuff like that. And so I went to the satsang and sat there, and there were like hundreds of people there. You could, Papaji was I could barely have any contact with him, but because I was someone new, at the end, they let you meet him individually for like 5 minutes, with the other new people who were there. So I went there and I had all these expectations from my letter, writing to Papaji. And when he finally talked to me, he just looked at me and he pulled out a letter and he said, when you go to the US, could you put this in the mailbox for me? And I said, yes. And that was it. He got up and went away. So this was like this big moment that I was waiting for with all of my sincerity and the like. Never saw Papaji again because he died within the next year. And then I went back home and I thought that I had done all these amazing things, but the first meeting with the baby Krishna rocking in the cradle, I didn't see it as an important event for me. I just thought that this was, one of the lesser things that I did on my trip to India. So I came back and just, went about my business. And 5 years later, I was in a meditation retreat. And at the end of the retreat, there was a party that night, and they were playing all different kinds of music. And the last song that they played that night was Krishna Das's Mahamudra, which is the Hare Krishna song. And I want to go back and say that holiday we were celebrating was Krishna's birthday. So the night of the retreat, 5 years later that I was at, happened to be the eve of my own birthday. And after singing Hare Krishna, I went back to my room and went asleep. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was this implosion of my consciousness that took me back to the moment when I was rocking the baby Krishna in his cradle 5 years ago in India, something that I really had forgotten about. It didn't seem like an important event to me. And I realized that I was the baby Krishna. I was rocking my own cradle. And that love that I was feeling toward the baby Krishna was this love for myself, and that I was free. So this intuition, this spontaneous intuition can arrive. You never know when it's going to arrive. You never know what these different events, the meaning that they have. But at the right moment, with the right intention in the right setting, these things can be revealed in a very special way. So that's one thing one story that I wanted to tell. Another part of the story was just I was still a student of non-duality at that point, and I was having these visions of Krishna and things. But I remembered Ramana's words, where Ramana was saying that anything that's not present in dreamless sleep is not real. So I was having bliss and I was having these visions and I was having all this joy, but because of something that I had read, that anything not present in dreamless sleep is not real, I was pushing away these gifts that were being given to me, right? So I went to another retreat. This was back in, I guess at that point it was like in 2003. And I had very deep intention, to awaken. I felt like, for these last, 7 years, I was just waiting, and I felt at each retreat, I would go deeper and deeper, but at the end, there'd still be this not enough. There'd still be this sadness. There'd still be this wound or whatever that was there. So I went to this one retreat for a week and had wonderful, beautiful, deep meditations. But at the end, even though I had the intention, I still felt that something was missing. And I had gone to the retreat with my wife at the time. And at the end of the retreat, when we were driving away, I had this sadness like, wow, I thought that this was the right moment. This was the time. And I was very sad in the car. And I said to her, I thought that this was it. I thought that this was the moment, when it was going to happen, this gift of resting in non-duality. And she pulled the car to the side of the road, my wife, and said, I want you to close your eyes. And I said, okay. And I closed my eyes. And she said, what's there? And I said, there's nothing. She said, what if that was it? What if that's what you were looking for all this time? And all of a sudden, there was just this wave of this dropping into non-duality that happened in that moment and has never left since then. The point of me bringing up this story is just how the intention and the mystery, they kind of go along in parallel to the right moment when, there is the moment when these things can kind of come into a confluence and reveal something that's just totally unexpected. And so the lesson kind of for me was sort of that even though I thought I had the right intention before, there was something that I wasn't open or available to. And it took the right time, it took the right place for the moment to be available. But then once I was there, I was able to really understand, like, oh, this is the veil that was covering up, what was available to me. This is what real effortless action is. This is what real surrender is. And there was just a huge teaching that came from that, through that experience. So I hope that was a useful story or something you're looking at.
That's fantastic, Katie. Thank you.
I always like to say, as Jeff knows, that there are no rules to spirituality, and both these kind of stories were just like totally beyond anything I could have conceived, and it was really this surrendering that happened to these ineffable or unexplainable mystery that we live in.
No, that was fantastic, KD. And I think I would just want to point out that, as we get to have the greatest time together, all of you and us together, where we get to speak about these things that matter so deeply and are so not the usual fare of the world. And you can feel, I hope, you can feel the essence of mastery in the atmosphere of this call. All I know is I'm just very pumped up because what's today, Tuesday? In less than a week, or in exactly a week, I get to be on retreat for 7 days, and I'm going to take the energy of this call into that retreat with me. So I feel like a very lucky, rich man. And I also want to, point out that I'm very intrigued by KD's yoga mastery retreat because, as I said, we've been speaking about this for at least a couple of months, I think longer than that. But the one thing that's been clear to me from the beginning that is, it's good to have something like yoga to anchor your retreat on, but the retreat's never really about that. Really, retreats at a certain level of engagement, all retreats are really about mastery of life, mastery of being. And they're all an opportunity for us to go more deeply into the magic that is unleashed when we learn, or when we begin to shift our perception in new ways, and when we begin to discover that depth of intention, which is unshakable and yet completely effortless. And this, it is truly a place that feels like magic. And I know that's the guiding principle of retreats when I lead them, and I know it's the guiding principle of KD's retreat. KD, can you tell us a little bit about, not what you're going to quote unquote do on retreat, because that's always secondary, but what you're going to really do on retreat, wink, wink. What is it really about to you?
Sure. It really is stepping into the heart of yoga and really surrendering to yoga itself, surrendering to the master teacher who's going to guide the retreat. And, we're going to learn things. We're going to learn about mastery through, like I said, mastering the senses. We'll do experiments with touch, and we'll look at reading bodies and working with language and speech and things. But really, it's to be a student of the unfolding of what the essence of yoga is, and what I like to call, what we're talking about today, that the master teacher takes over, and we are in awe, and we are all learning. We are all students, and that every time we come to yoga, it will truly be a fresh experience each time. That each time one steps on the mat, your way of yoga is going to be your unique individual way that's revealed for you, not what everybody else is doing. And if you're a teacher and your student walks into the room, you can work with each student in a unique individual way, every class, every time. And in that same way, you're working with yourself in that way as the master teacher reveals itself through you. And so it's about listening, it's about seeing, it's about learning, and it's about allowing this, spontaneous intuition that can arise to then guide us into a place where yoga goes beyond, a practice. I don't like the word practice, because so often when we practice, we're just doing over something over and over again and adding more conditioning. When we are following the way of yoga, we are unconditioning. We are in that moment of, infinite possibility. As I know, we have the master of infinite possibility here with us. But yes, that there's that moment where just it can go anywhere and anything and take us way beyond mastering something like postures, but mastering life, as Jeff alluded to. And so that's the essence of this retreat. That's the kernel, and that's what I hope to learn as well as guide with anyone who comes, all of you, and anyone who shows up there. It's an honor for me to be able to serve this effortless action and an opportunity for spontaneous intuition to explore itself.
That's fantastic, KD. And Joanna Rucker wrote to me just saying, commenting that this is a remarkable conversation beyond the practice. And I also opened up the chat box, so if you have any comments you want to make, you can. And in a moment, KD and I would love to take any questions. But one thing I just wanted to comment on, because I'm loving the language you're using around the master teacher, which is that the master teacher is yoga itself. And I can really relate to that in terms of meditation, that often I feel like the role I play is more a coach than a teacher, because I'm coaching people how to learn from the meditation. You know, I mean, I think it's great if people want to learn from me, and but you can only learn as much as I know. But if you learn how to learn from meditation, you can learn from the cosmos herself directly, and she's the true master teacher. And she's willing to share her wisdom through practices like yoga and meditation and many others. If we learn how to have the right perception, the right listening, and if that is really our unshakable intention. So this has been a fantastic conversation, and I hope it's generated a question or two that we can respond to. If you just hit in the bottom bar, the raise hand, then I'll be able to see you and I can unmute you. If you prefer, you can just chat something right into the chat box and we can respond to it that way. But I have Robert. Nice to see you, Robert.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, KD. Hi, everyone. I think I got something there when you were in the car with your wife, KD, and what are you experiencing? And you said, nothing. And I tied that together with your statement. Anything that is not present in dreamless sleep is not real. That means that, well, there's nothing in dreamless sleep. So it's the same nothing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. And again, just how much like a koan it was. And for me, like I've been a difficult student, I think, over my life, but luckily there's been those moments when I could take in, what's being given. And I think that that's what happens, for all of us, that we do really have opportunities every moment of every day. It's just if we're aware at that moment, and if we're paying attention for just these marvels that are revealing themselves. And I was a difficult student, but and got a bunch of knocks along the road, but I finally learned something. And it doesn't mean that it's there all the time. I'm still getting kicked down the road, but just those remarkable moments when those insights happen, it's like, oh yeah. Yeah. So gorgeous. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, well, this has been an absolutely delightful conversation. And I guess what's occurring for me now is I would sincerely encourage you to look at what KD is doing on retreat. I'll make sure when I send you an email with the audio link to this, that there's also a link to that retreat. And I'm going to get to a question that just popped in a second. But yes, I just would love for you. I know that KD's put a lot of thought into, constructing a container for yoga mastery in the way that we've been speaking about it, for the emergence of the true master. And, if it's something that's calling to you, I couldn't recommend a retreat more highly. So I'll send you the link so you can take a look at what he's doing. And in the meantime, Joanne, a different Joanne than the Joanna from before, wrote, I have stopped struggling and I am wondering if I have shut down because I am still expecting something extraordinary to happen. You want to take a stab at that, KD, or do you want? I wish Joanne were here. Joanne, you're here. Can we talk to you? Or would you prefer we just answer through chat?
Well, I'm just happy to say, that the expectation is maybe something to just be with and see, if I let expectation just soften, what might be there, next to it or underneath it. Because again, as I was speaking about even my own perceptions, like in the same moment, as Jeff I've heard Jeff say, and before, meditation is always happening. Right now, that resting, that meditation, that expanded consciousness is available at any moment, no matter what the mind is doing. So I think if we can just sit with whatever's going on, in our mind in any moment, and just allow ourselves to just rest and see what arises, there's the potential for us to get a beautiful piece of gold there. And so,
beautiful. So again, Joanne said, I have stopped struggling and I am wondering if I have shut down because I am still expecting something extraordinary to happen. And what I would like to say to you, Joanne, around this, and this is for everybody, because I find this to be probably one of the most common challenges of the path, which is something that we would see as completely extraordinary if we read it in a book or saw it in someone else. If it happens to us, we think it's not that big a deal, only because it happened to us. Because these things, they seem extraordinary when they haven't happened to you and you see it in someone else. You go, oh my God, that person stopped struggling. That's extraordinary. But you stop struggling, you go, something's wrong. It doesn't seem like that big a deal. But these kind of awakenings, as amazing as they are, from a certain point of view, they don't actually seem like that big of a deal when they happen to you. They just are your experience. So I would want to encourage you, Joanne, to think a little bit or to explore a little bit how extraordinary it is that you can honestly say, I have stopped struggling. And I can guarantee you to the vast majority of people on the planet, that would definitely classify as an extraordinary happening. So, I think sometimes we overlook how extraordinary the experience we have is, and we disqualify it from being extraordinary only based on the fact that it happened to us, that it's ours, and therefore it doesn't seem that strange to us, just the way it is. You're very welcome, Joanne. And I think with that, we will end this program. I will send you an email probably in the morning with the audio link, with the link to KD's retreat, although I think you can find it. KD, maybe you can type the URL.
I will, yes. It's yogamasterluxuryretreat.com. I'll type
there you go.
And I'm on Facebook, KD Myers, MUIERS 108. But yes, thank you so much, everybody.
Sure. We'll make sure that people get that link. And I just want to thank you all. You're such beautiful souls, such powerful and profound spiritual adepts. I have the privilege of being able to be here today with each one of you, with KD, and with the master teacher, as the true master wanted to show up today. So thank you so much. And please, KD, thank you very, very much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And again, it's just such a beautiful experience here. I'm loving it. Have a great day.
It's very, very wonderful. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Much love. Thank you.